I call to order. Let us observe a minute of silent prayer. Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call members, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Derlon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zuberi, Senate President Pimentel.
Tama, 17, no? 17. With 17 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 76th session, Tuesday, May 2, 2017, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, Senator Drilon.
Very minor typographical correction on page 1302. Second column,
Wala naman akong journal.
3 lines from the bottom, my family name is misspelled, missing N.
The staff misspelled the name of our neophyte senator. They're still unfamiliar with the spelling. Okay, so with there's a motion to correct, please.
Mr. President.
Senator Dillon.
Yes. Likewise, if I recall, in yesterday's session, we moved that the amendments we submitted be considered as approved, and that the second set of amendments will be those coming from the members of the chamber who will have amendments to the proposals that we submitted. That is what I recall. It is not so reflected in the journal.
What page?
Unless I did not see it, Mr. President.
May I have 1 minute suspension, Mr. President, to allow us to look over the
Okay, so a minute
particular
suspension.
page?
A minute suspension.
Ito, sa page 1302 mo. Yung na-misspell ka. In-approve natin, ano? Hindi, kulang lang.
Okay na? Okay. Na-capture naman daw sa 13.
We're ready to resume, Mr.
Session
President.
is resumed.
Mr. President, in reply to the second query of the minority leader, we were informed that on page 1359 the question is reflected. It is reflected there, Mr. President. So the The amendment to the journal would be on the spelling only, Mr. President, of the name of the minority leader.
Only in one instance?
Only in one instance,
so-
1302, page 1302.
Okay, there's a motion to dispense with the reading of the journal of the 76th session, Tuesday, May 2, 2017, and consider the same as approved as corrected. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to acknowledge guests of our colleagues, the guests of the Senate President from the Barangay Council of Barangay Maribago, Lapu-Lapu City. We have Councilors Arvin Abing, Cesaria Umpad, Eddie Dano, Rosalino Abing, Melody Pakibot, Anesita Pakibot, Treasurer Ponciana Soliano, and Secretary Lani Pangatungan. Also, the guests of Senator Aquino and Senator Pangilinan, the Most Reverend Broderick Pabilio, Auxiliary Bishop of Manila, together with Dr. Maria Julieta Wasan, Executive VP of LAIKO, members of the LAICO, Rosarita Mariano, Valintan, Grace Anisa, Melissa Makapangapan, the President of the Catholic Women's League, and youth leaders from the UP Practice of Administrative Leadership and Service, Nicole Pareño, the UP Samahan Tungo sa Progresibong Administrasyon, presented by Kenneth Dingal, and Amnesty International, represented by Wilnor Papa. Also, Mr. President, we'd like to welcome the Mayor of Anilao, Iloilo, Mayor Natalie Ann Debuque, and the Liga ng mga Barangay President, Ms. Laika Debuque.
So welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, would like to greet, although a bit late, but we were on break, the birthday of Senator Gatchalian, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian.
Senator
last
Gatchalian,
April, so.
Senator Subiri also celebrated during the break.
Senator Subiri
And who
during
else?
the break. So would like to greet them happy birthday and inform the colleagues that they have something prepared for the members.
Senator Gatchalian, today, for today.
Yes, Mr. President.
Senator
I believe
Subiri.
it's Senator Gatchalian's treat today and I'll be treating on Monday. So, maski na po isang buwan na yung birthday ko,
Yeah.
hindi ko nakakalimutan ng mga colleagues natin.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you for that, but better coordinate with Senator Aquino, who is celebrating his birthday this weekend. Monday.
Monday pa, okay.
Monday. Same. Same na, kaya nga.
We'll ask them to coordinate
Yes, they
with each
will.
other.
Monday ka, Tuesday ako.
All right.
Because the
If
rule,
I stand corrected,
Yes.
Mr. President, I treat on Tuesday.
the rule in the Senate is celebrating separately.
No joint. Right. I move to proceed with the reference of business, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved. Secretary?
Bills on first reading. 1415, an act providing for the protection, security, and benefits of whistleblowers, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Richard J. Gordon.
Referred to the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
1416, an act to encourage good Samaritans who provide reasonable assistance in an emergency by protecting them from liability, Senator Richard Gordon.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development and Justice and Human Rights.
1417, an act requiring basic citizen service training, establishing the Citizen Service Corps, creating the Citizen Service Commission for the purpose, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Youth and Finance.
1418, an act to encourage volunteerism by protecting volunteers from liability in the performance of volunteer services, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development and Justice and Human Rights.
1419, an act providing for free irrigation service and the condonation of back accounts of or unpaid irrigation service fees, amortization and equity payments of farmers and irrigators associations from the National Irrigation Administration, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
1420, an act exempting the sale of real property in the exercise of state's power of eminent domain from the payment of capital gains and documentary stamp taxes, amending for this purpose sections 24D and 196 of Republic Act number 8424 as amended, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
1421, an act creating the Department of Overseas Filipino Workers, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development, Foreign Relations and Finance.
1422, an act exempting the manufacture, assembly, conversion, and importation of plug-in hybrid electric vehicles from the payment of excise taxes and duties and for other purposes, Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Ways and Means and Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
1423, an act strengthening local infrastructure industry players, amending for the purpose section 23 of Republic Act number 9184, otherwise known as the Government Procurement Reform Act, and for other purposes, Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Finance.
1424, an act establishing the Philippine Center for Diabetes and Endocrinology, and for other purposes, by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Ways and Means and Finance.
1425, an act to enhance the regulation of employment of foreign nationals and transfer of technology, amending for the purpose Articles 40, 41, and 42, Title 2, Book 1 of Presidential Decree number 442 as amended, or the Labor Code of the Philippines by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development.
1426, an act waiving government fees and charges on the issuance of documents required in the application for employment of first-time job seekers, Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committees on Youth and Civil Service, Government Organization and Professional Regulation.
1427, an act enhancing workplace productivity through promotion of productivity incentives and gain sharing, amending for this purpose, Republic Act number 6971, otherwise known as the Productivity Incentives Act of 1990, Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development.
1428, an act allowing the monetization of maternity leave credits of female employees and the covered social security system female members, and for other purposes, Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations and Gender Equality.
1429, an act amending Section 23 of Republic Act number 9165, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, allowing plea bargaining in certain cases, Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Justice and Human Rights.
1430, an act declaring December 8 of every year a special non-working holiday in the entire country to commemorate the feast of the Immaculate Conception of Mary, the principal patroness of the Philippines, by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture.
Resolutions 349, resolution expressing the full support of the Senate of the Philippines to the International Red Cross and Red Crescent movement in prohibiting and eliminating nuclear weapons at the global level. Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committee on Rules.
350, resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the state of the overseas Filipino workers, contributions, and membership benefits in the National Health Insurance Program through PhilHealth and for other purposes, by Senator Cynthia Villar.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development and Health and Demography.
351, resolution urging the Senate Committee on Public Order to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the issue of secret detention centers within police stations and allegations of extortion and torture against detainees by members of the Philippine National Police. Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Justice and Human Rights.
352, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and other appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the recently discovered secret cell containing 12 detainees in Police Station Number 1 at Raksabago, Tondo, Manila, as uncovered by the Commission on Human Rights with the end in view of preventing members of Philippine National Police and other law enforcement agencies from using their authority, training, and position to commit human rights violations and other abuses under the guise of implementing the administration's war on drugs. Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Justice and Human Rights.
353, resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and other appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged systematic problem plaguing the Philippine National Police in connection with the administration's war on drugs, taking into consideration the testimonies of several witnesses and a police officer tagging members of the PNP in the perpetuation of extrajudicial killings, with the end in view of coming up with remedial legislation to ensure that the war on drugs is not used by the PNP and other state actors as license to commit human rights violations and other illegal acts, and that those responsible will be held accountable and the people concerned are afforded their human rights, and or that the right to due process of law is respected by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Justice and Human Rights.
354, resolution urging the Senate Committee on the Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, and other appropriate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the accusations of Charlie Atong Ang and that two cabinet officials, namely Justice Secretary Vitaliano Aguirre and National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon, and other former military officials are using their agencies and positions in an alleged plot to kill him in an attempt to take over his company's gambling operations, with the end in view of ensuring that public officials use the resources and power of the respective offices for public interest and in the discharge of their duties, and that they should refrain from doing acts to advance their personal financial interests, by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations.
355, a resolution directing the Senate Committee on Public Services to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the reported inefficient management and maintenance of the Metro Rail Transit, MRT3, resulting in increasing incidents of train malfunctions, and the reported need to examine the newly delivered Dalian trains due to allegations that it will remain unusable until 2018, by Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Committee Report Number 59, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance on Senate Bill Number 1431 with Senator Joel Villanueva as author thereof, entitled An Act Instituting a Philippine Labor Force Competencies Competitiveness Program, establishing free access to technical and vocational training programs, and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill Number 1318, sponsored Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to speak on a matter of public interest, may you recognize Senator Lauren Legarda.
Is there any objection? There being none, Senator Legarda is recognized to speak on a matter of public interest.
Mr. President, the 60th Palarong Pambansa recently concluded in my home province of Antique, and I stand here today to express my gratitude to everyone involved and to commit my continuing support for sports development in our country. I'm the most unlikely person to stand here for sports development. As we know, Senator Pacquiao, Senator Sani Angara, or maybe even Senator Soto would be the sports aficionados, and I would be the last one. But since it was hosted, very unlikely, in the province of Antique, I stand here to thank all of those responsible. I wish to congratulate all the participants from the winning region, National Capital Region, and to all the student athletes from all regions. It was a proud moment for me to see our young, talented athletes gathered in my home province. I would like to thank the President, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, for gracing the opening ceremony. I did not expect him to come on a Sunday with his wife, Hanilet, and his daughter on a Sunday afternoon, despite his busy schedule and in the week or the weekend before the ASEAN Summit. His presence was greatly appreciated by the Antiqueños, but more so by the student athletes who felt that sports development is a priority of government. I also wish to thank the Department of Education, led by Secretary Leonor Briones, who was there, and Assistant Secretary Tunisito Umali, who is the Secretary General of the Palarong Pambansa, as well as the Philippine Sports Commission Chairperson, William Butch Ramirez, for his unstinting support for Antique in staging this very important sports event. ASEC Umali said that the DepEd is developing a roadmap that would build champions through regular trainings of student athletes, the provision of assistance from the PSC, and the establishment of varsity systems in public schools. We need to develop sports and encourage the youth to be involved in sports and other extracurricular activities for their holistic development, and also as a way to keep the youth off drugs and other vices. Finally, I congratulate my dear Governor Rodora Cadiao, Vice Governor Edgar Denosta, and local officials and employees and my fellow Antiqueños. I'm very proud of them. Through their diligence, cooperation, and sense of duty, our humble but beautiful and historic province was able to host the Palarong Pambansa. Antique's hosting of the Palarong Pambansa proves that even a small province can stage a big national event with the support and cooperation of all agencies and sectors concerned. With passion, hard work, and creativity, we can accomplish great things. In fact, the use of homestays to accommodate some of the delegates and their companions provided a unique experience, as it allowed better interaction between the guests and the Antiqueños, with some building friendships and even exchanging recipes. It was a Region 10 DepEd official who came to me and said in the beginning they were reluctant to go or even support it, because he said Antique did not have the 5-star hotels. But he said he was so grateful that it was held in Antique because the homestay and the bed and breakfast experience in the 7 towns which hosted the Palarong Pambansa turned out to be a very gratifying experience. And they did not only showcase sports development, but also their arts and crafts. And so in Patnongan, where I went, there was a trade fair of the arts and crafts and even the food of Region 10. And clearly we saw an exchange of expertise, an exchange of culture between and among our regions. Camaraderie was built not only inside the sporting venues among the student athletes, but also within the province and their guests. The Palarong also gave Antique the opportunity to showcase tourism. Guests felt a warm Antiqueño hospitality, and they were amazed with the natural beauty of our province. This is why we must preserve our natural treasures, which provide us with positive energy that allow us to be more productive and inspired. It was a venue to showcase arts and culture, and as I said, DepEd Region 10, just like other regions, organized the inauguration of a friendship marker between the province or the provinces of Northern Mindanao and Antique, and to set up the traditional crafts bazaar, which allowed them to share with other regions their culture and creativity. This is a true value of the Palarong Pambansa. It is not only geared towards sports development, but also serves as a venue for instilling the values of self-discipline, the respect for law and order, sportsmanship, and camaraderie. It is an avenue to showcase the beauty of our provinces, the strength of our people, and the unity among our citizens. And lastly, I think that the choice of Antique as a venue for our Palarong Pambansa shows the social inclusion in terms of selecting the area which would host the Palaro. With that, Mr. President, I thank you very much, and thank also Senator Drilon, our Minority Leader, for being the closing guest of honor of our Palarong Pambansa. And perhaps soon, Antique can rival, can be at parity with what Senator Drilon has done for Iloilo. So with that, congratulations to everyone involved in the 60th Palarong Pambansa. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I just be allowed to make a very short manifestation. At this juncture, I'd also like to congratulate our distinguished colleague, Senator Lauren Legarda, for her usual very interesting speech. I'd like to congratulate the entire province of Antique for successfully hosting the 60th Palarong Pambansa. Mr. President, I have so much respect to our student athletes, and I also would like to congratulate them for participating in this year's Palarong Pambansa. Mr. President, joining the Palarong Pambansa is not an easy feat. This representation was able to join the Palarong Pambansa 25 years ago, back in 1992 in Zamboanga City, along with other student athletes from all over the country. Since then, Mr. President, student athletes like myself go through different struggles just to be given, Mr. President, the opportunity to represent our respective schools and our provinces. Tulad po nila, Mr. President, tayo po ay nagbilad din sa araw ng napakatagal, ng itim ng husto, nagtiis na matulog sa matigas na sahig ng mga classrooms, kaya napakataas ng respeto natin sa mga student athletes. Mr. President, hindi po matatawaran ang halaga ng Palarong Pambansa para sa marami po nating kabataan. Palarong Pambansa serves to open several doors of opportunities to many student athletes, especially for young Filipinos with great potential to make it big in both national and global arena. Tayo po mismo, Mr. President, ay malaki ang pasasalamat sa Palarong Pambansa. Ito po ang nagbigay daan para po sa atin na magkaroon ng pagkakataon na maging athletic scholar sa kolehiyo. Student athletes have a unique struggle that requires them to balance the responsibility of training on a regular basis while having to accomplish their academic duties at the same. Indeed, Mr. President, the Palarong Pambansa serves as a platform to recognize the efforts made by our young athletes. But going beyond extending the recognition they duly deserve, we also hope to provide greater support for our student athletes. Towards this end, Mr. President, I filed the Senate Bill number 1194, or the Magna Carta for Student Athletes, to protect and strengthen the rights of student athletes and provide them the support they need to achieve their fullest athletic potentials. We thank the Chair of the Committee on Education, Senator Escudero, for giving immediate attention to this proposal and for including this during this morning's committee hearing. I seek, Mr. President, the support of the members of this chamber for the immediate passage of this measure. Again, Mr. President, maraming salamat po at mabuhay ang ating mga kabataang atleta.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the privileged speech of Senator Legarda and the ensuing manifestation by Senator Villanueva be referred to the Committee on Sports and the Committee on Education.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the Chamber, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders Senate Bill 1431 under Committee Report number 59.
Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, motion is approved.
With the permission of the body, I move to consider Senate Bill 1431 under Committee Report Number 59.
Any objection? There being none, Senate Bill number 1431 under Committee Report number 59 is now under consideration.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act instituting a Philippine Labor Force Competencies Competitiveness Program, establishing free access to technical and vocational training programs, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask that the Chairman of the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, Senator Joel Villanueva, be recognized.
Is there an objection? There being none, Senator Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Mr. President, I have the honor to sponsor Committee Report number 59, containing Senate Bill number 1431, an act instituting a Philippine Labor Force Competencies Competitiveness Program, establishing free access to technical and vocational training programs, and for other purposes, or the Tulong Trabaho Act of 2017. Let me tell you a story, Mr. President. Back in 2012, I asked my staff at TESDA to organize a nationwide blogging contest. For the blogging team, we choose Sa TESDA, May Choice Ka. Our goal is to spread the idea that TechVoc graduates actually have a better chance in landing jobs and address job skills mismatch. And a career in TechVoc can actually lead to a better future. And for just 2 weeks, Mr. President, we received around 50 blog entries which emphasized that TechVoc is really the way to go. One of the blog entries that enlightened and motivated this representation came from the blog site Chelelandia. The bloggers shared the success story of Leo, Enriquez, and Eugene Tero, TechVoc graduates from Dumaguete City. They left the Philippines in mid-2011 as OFWs to work in a meat processing company in Australia as butchers. Each of them receives a jaw-dropping salary equivalent to about 180,000 monthly for a 4-year contract. The blogger narrated Leo and Eugene's struggles before getting to TESDA. Leo's work in Australia was a long way from his drug addiction days and the painful years of trying to make ends meet. For Eugene, whose parents abandoned him and his sister, a child with special needs. The blogger also described how TESDA brought the two men together when they enrolled in a slaughtering course through TESDA's Training for Work Scholarship Program, or TWSP. The course trained them on the standard slaughtering procedures of livestock such as flaying, brisket cutting, and evisceration. After their graduation, Eugene and Leo honed their slaughtering skills at the Dumaguete City Slaughterhouse. To increase their chances of finding work abroad, they uploaded videos demonstrating their skills on YouTube. These YouTube posts helped them land their dream job in Australia. This blog entry won the Most Creative Blog Award. Our blogging contest proved that the idea, TechVoc is the way to go, was worth spreading. Eventually, Mr. President, the idea turned into actual enrollees, graduates, and more Filipinos whose lives were transformed because of technical vocational education and training. After a year, I was informed by my staff that Leo and Eugene have already brought their families to Australia and living a more comfortable life. We followed up this story, and what we found out surprised us. A number of workers from Dumaguete followed the footsteps of Eugene and Leo. They enrolled at TESDA, spent their OJT in slaughterhouses, uploaded their butchering skills demo videos on YouTube, and got hired in Australia. Their videos, which are still accessible via YouTube, have more than 15,000 views as of today. Noong pinapanood ko po, Mr. President, ang mga YouTube videos ng mga certified butchers mula sa Dumaguete, napaisip po ako, paano na kung hindi po nakarating ang TWSP vouchers sa kanila? Makakatapos po kaya sila ng slaughtering o butchering course? Makakarating po kaya sila sa Australia at makukuha kaya nila ang magandang trabaho at malaking sweldo? Mr. President, there is indeed a need to expand the allocation of scholarship programs like TWSP and other TESDA programs to ensure that there will be more butchers like Leo and Eugene and other TechVoc graduates like drivers, cooks, baristas, graphic designers, welders, machine operators, etc., who can land good jobs out of TechVoc training and attain a better future. This is the heart of our proposed Senate Bill 1431, increase the allocation for TechVoc training through a Tulong Trabaho Fund. Mr. President, this Tulong Trabaho Fund will be included in the General Appropriations Act and will be managed and decided on by the Tulong Trabaho Board composed of the TESDA Board and other stakeholders. We believe that this measure will further democratize access to select TechVoc programs, ensure higher standards in our training systems, and strengthen our certification frameworks. Mr. President, among TESDA scholarship programs, right now only the private education, student financial assistance, or PESFA is fixed by law. It has an allocation of 200 million pesos annually. On the other hand, the TWSP receives an allocation from the General Appropriations Act. In the TESDA roadmap, the agency targeted an annual increase of 10% for TWSP. In 2016, it received a funding of 2.2 billion pesos. But for this year, it has been retained at the same amount of money, despite the increasing demand for TechVoc courses and the imperative for productivity enhancement and skills upgrading of existing workers. Furthermore, Mr. President, TESDA scholarships represented only around 12% of the total TVET outputs in all delivery modes. Kaya naman, Mr. President, sadya pong kulang talaga at pabago-bago ang level ng alokasyon, samantalang patuloy po sa pagtaas ang bilang ng mga mag-aaral na kumukuha ng TechVoc courses. Patuloy ring lumalawak ang mga negosyong nangangailangan ng mga manggagawang patuloy na nagpapaunlad ng kanilang kaalaman bunga ng mabilis na pagbabago ng teknolohiya at mga inobasyon sa mga pook gawaan. Mr. President, your committee believes that increasing the allocation for TESDA scholarship programs through a Tulong Trabaho Fund will lead to higher TVET outputs and greater productivity of existing workers. This belief is supported by TESDA's track record in providing training and employment to our people in the past years, especially when the TWSP received additional allocations. From 1.6 million enrollees in 2010, the number of enrollees rose to 45% in 2015 at 2.3 million. The employment rate of TechVoc graduates also posted a significant improvement from 48.5% in 2005 to 65.4% in 2014. Across na po ito, Mr. President, sa private at public programs ng TechVoc. Consistent with the UniFast Act of 2015, the Tulong Trabaho Fund will pave the way for a free TechVoc, especially for young people who are not in education, employment and training, and for productivity enhancement of existing workers, for them to step up the career ladder and to complement technological change in the workplace. We also propose a Philippine Labor Force Competencies Competitiveness Program, which will establish based on our labor market intelligence reports. Hence, the measure also guarantees industry participation, Mr. President, including incentives and engagement of local government units. Mr. President, the bill will also set up a performance-based financing. Our schools and training centers must ensure that at least 70% of the Tulong Trabaho Fund beneficiaries will be certified after the training program. Transparency in the fund's utilization is also guaranteed through a registry of training providers that will be made accessible to the public through the internet. Noong pong Lunes, Mr. President, Labor Day, isa po sa mga isyong binigyang pansin natin ay ang pagtaas ng bilang ng mga Pilipinong walang trabaho. Kalahati po sa kanila, Mr. President, ay mga kabataan, edad 18 hanggang 24. Nakakabagabag po ang mga datos na ito. Isa sa bawat 4 na kabataan ay sinasabing not in education, employment, and training. Habang 89%, 89% ng mga kabataang kumikita na ay nananatili sa mga mabababang klase ng trabaho o low-skilled at manual at operating machinery occupations. Kaugnay po nito, Mr. President, sa panibagong survey ng SWS na inilabas nitong Mayo, mahigit 10 milyong Pilipino, 10.4 million po ang jobless, samantalang bumaba rin ang optimism rate tungkol sa kalagayan ng trabaho sa bansa. Gusto po nating baguhin ang sitwasyong ito upang magkaroon ng dahilan maging lalong positibo. Layunin din po ng Tulong Trabaho Act, Mr. President, na solusyonan ang job skills mismatch at bigyan ng disente at permanenteng trabaho ang ating mga kababayan, lalo na po ang ating mga kabataan. Ibinabahagi ko po ang nais ko pong ibahagi, Mr. President, na dalawa sa mga first-time job seekers na nabalitaan ko sa mga job fairs natin noon ay sina Reynald at Carol. Hindi ko po malilimutan ang kwento nila. Lumuwas ng Maynila, nagbaka sakali sa mga job fairs ng Dole. Nakakuha naman po ng trabaho, ngunit may pag-aalinlangan, Mr. President. Si Reynald Vince Brillante, natanggap po on the spot bilang salesman sa Saudi Arabia. Kahit hindi niya gustong mag-abroad, pinatos po niya ang nakuhang trabaho. Sabi po niya, mas gusto ko na sa Saudi kasi ang kontrata sa abroad, 2 years. Sa Pilipinas, 5 buwan lang. Si Carol Magallanes naman ay taga Bicol po. Napilitan din pong kumuha ng trabaho. Ang sabi naman po niya, okay lang sa akin na hindi tugma ang tinapos kong kurso sa makukuha kong trabaho. Ang mahalaga, makapapasok na ako sa trabaho para may income na rin at makakatulong sa aking pamilya. Mr. President, kung may sapat na pondo po para sa techbook training, hindi po mag-aalinlangan ang mga kabataang humanap ng disenteng trabaho na malapit sa kanilang pamilya at naaayon din po sa kanilang kasanayan. Mr. President, your committee believes that the passage of this bill will make techbook accessible to all, boost our workers' confidence to face the world of work, and ensure that the youth who are ready to work hard are provided with the right skill sets and to obtain in-demand jobs. More importantly, Mr. President, this bill is our response to the dramatic changes in the nature of jobs and to continue to enable knowledge to flow to lagging industries and sectors. Marapat lamang po na dagdagan natin ang programang pang-techvoc sa pamamagitan ng Tulong Trabaho Fund. Isakatuparan po natin ang libreng techvoc para sa lahat. Ipasa po sana natin ang Senate Bill number 1431, ang pondo para sa paglikha ng trabaho, ang pondo para sa manggagawang Pilipino. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, and may God bless us all.
Mr. President.
Senator Ligarda, what is the pleasure of Senator Ligarda?
Mr. President, I know that after the sponsorship, I'm sure that many of our colleagues would have to study this and would have to interpolate. But before that, and I would like to introduce at the proper time my amendments. But even before I formally interpolate, I would just like to express my wholehearted support for this measure. And even before it is enacted into law, may I request that the good sponsor, the TESDAMAN, submit to the Committee on Finance the budgetary provisions needed for the implementation of Trabaho Tulong. In short, bago pa ho maging batas, kung wala pong counterpart sa bababang kapuluan, alam natin, panahon po ng budget call ngayon, ibigay po niya sa Committee on Finance ng Senado at sa TESDA para po ipasok na nila sa kanilang budget. Ako po'y naniniwala sa kahalagan ng trabaho tulong, ng kahalagan ng TESDA, ng TVET, at hindi naman lahat ng tao ay maaring makapasok sa kolehiyo o akma ang kanilang skills o kaalaman sa kolehiyo. At ang TechVoc training ay napakahalaga. And I see sometimes a disconnect between the availability of skills and the availability of openings as well. Just for the information of the good sponsor, in my first term, like you when I was a neophyte senator, I, together with then Senate President Ople, authored the PESO bill, creating the Public Employment Service Office. I think it was Senator Angara who sponsored the amendments to the PESO Act. I hope that our PESO officers in every city, municipality would take their jobs to heart by doing a matching of the jobs available in the province, in the city, in the town, in the district, with the skills of the people. But also, apart from tinutugma ang trabaho sa kaalaman ng tao, TechVoc training is so important. But as the good sponsor, the expert in TechVoc training mentioned to me last night in a conversation, it's not enough that we provide the skills. It's not enough that we have all these lectures in the countryside, but to give them the toolkits, to give them the capital assistance, to give them the wherewithal to start their own micro-enterprise, that's important. Sa pag-ikot ko po sa ating bansa, kasama ng aking lalawigan ng Antique, ay sabi po nila, magandang tinuturuan po kami, pero kailangan naman namin magkaroon ng kaunting puhunan at kaunting gamit para masimulan ang aming maliit na kabuhayan. Siguro po ay maari itugma ang kanyang proposal na legislation na ito sa mga batas na meron na po tayo. Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises Act, Barangay Kabuhayan Act, na ang TESDA ang siyang nagpapatupad. Yan po ang aking batas na ginawa nung ako'y bata pa gaya ni Senator Joel. Tapos ngayon, itong Tulong Trabaho Act. Kaya nga po, hinihingi ko na sa inyo ang pundong kailangan, kung kakayanin, na pwede niyong isumite sa TESDA even before it is enacted into law, that we can already help support it. Just like the CHED scholarships of Senator Bam Aquino and Senator Angara and Senator Sherwin, that even before it is enacted into law and implemented in June, we had already funded the free education in the college education in 2017. With that intervention, Mr. President, I would like to request that from the good sponsor for the Committee on Finance. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time to the other senators to study the bill, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1431 under Committee Report Number 59.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Senate Bill 1365 under Committee Report Number 45.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
With the permission of the body, I move to consider Senate Bill 1365 under Committee Report Number 45.
Is there any objection? There being none, we proceed to consider Senate Bill number 1365 under Committee Report number 45.
May we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act extending the validity of Philippine passports, amending for the purpose Section 10 of Republic Act Number 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask that there will be two members of the Senate who will sponsor this measure, Mr. President. The Vice Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, Senator Cynthia Villar, and the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto. So may I move that we recognize Senator Cynthia Villar to deliver her sponsorship speech.
Is there any objection? There being none, Senator Villar is recognized.
Ako na lang. Wala si Alan. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues in the Senate, good afternoon. Our Constitution guarantees our countrymen the right to travel. We should indeed have the freedom to move around and even leave the country for whatever valid purpose we may have. We could only be prevented by the government from leaving the country only if there is a statutory basis for it, and the grounds are limited only to matters of national security, public safety, or public health. The government thus issues passports in order to ensure that we could exercise our right to travel abroad, as almost all countries require passport bearing visas from those entering their territories. If the process of issuance or renewal of passport becomes too cumbersome or slow to Filipinos who urgently need them, especially our overseas Filipino workers, then their right to travel is effectively impaired. Adverse consequences may include lost opportunities to have gainful employment. It is thus my privilege to co-sponsor a bill that, if passed into law, will provide much-needed relief to our countrymen, particularly the overseas Filipino workers who have jobs waiting for them abroad. I am pleased to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 1365 under Committee Report number 45, entitled An Act of Extending the Validity of the Philippine Passports, amending for the purpose Section 10 of Republic Act number 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996, and for other purposes. While the bill is plain and simple, it is decidedly beneficial to the traveling public. The bill seeks to assure the government protection of the right to travel for a duration of 10 years from the current 5 years by amending Section 10 of Republic Act 8239, or the Philippine Passport Act of 1996. Section 10 essentially states that the validity of a passport is only 5 years from the date it was issued. However, as currently practiced, a passport's validity is actually less than 5 years because travel abroad is often disallowed for one with a passport that will expire in 6 months' time or less. In order to make travel abroad easier for OFWs, the bill simply extends the validity of regular passport to 10 years, although the 5-year validity of passports of minors or those individuals under 18 years of age is being retained. A minor's passport should indeed be renewed every 5 years because a minor's facial changes while growing up. An adult's facial features basically remain the same for longer periods. Hence, the renewal of an adult passport every 10 years is up. At any rate, the Department of Foreign Affairs is authorized to limit the period of validity to less than the regular validity period when the interest of national security, public safety, or public health calls for it. One may question the necessity of extending the validity of passport to 10 years. The solution, one may say, is perhaps merely to further streamline the requirements for the issuance or renewal of passports, to open additional offices, to hire additional personnel, or to procure more machines needed in passport production. The process, which in my opinion is already streamlined, still involves the preparation and submission of documents that will be visually evaluated by DFA personnel. Opening additional office spaces, hiring additional personnel, and procuring more machines obviously take time and will not immediately translate to solving the problem of long lines of waiting applicants. The DFA reports that there are 868 of its employee personnel nationwide who are involved in the processing of passports. In 2016, they were processing 3,123,004 applications for new passports, renewals, or replacement of lost passports. The DFA issues 3,102,278 passports in 2016, leaving approximately 20,000 applicants that are perhaps still being evaluated together with new applications submitted in 2017. From 2010 to 2016, there has been a 29.3% annual growth of passport issuance. With an ever-increasing population having an ever-increasing capacity or need to travel abroad, the human factor still delays the process to a certain extent. The extension of the validity of passport to 10 years is necessary for a number of reasons. I mentioned some of them earlier. as other countries such as the United States of America and Canada already issue passports that are valid for 10 years. The DFA does not oppose the proposal to increase the validity of passports from the present 5 years to 10 years. In a committee hearing in the House of Representatives, Migrante International has expressed its approval of this legislative measure. Migrante acknowledges that the extension of the validity of period to 10 years will lengthen the OFW's opportunity to enjoy and exercise their constitutional rights, will make them more productive at work, and will provide them more time to enjoy with their families. Going back then to the predicament of our OFWs, the government focus should be to find ways to make it easier for them to find jobs and get to their employers abroad. We owe a lot to our OFWs. They keep our economy afloat with a remittance of approximately $15 billion annually. Giving them a 10-year guarantee on their right to travel abroad will certainly be a great help to them. President Duterte acknowledges the importance of this legislative measure. In his first State of the Nation address on July 25, 2016, he mentioned the necessity of stretching the validity of passports from the current 5 to 10 years. He deplored the situation of passport applicants he observed in Davao City. There were long lines of applicants, some lying down on the pavements. Some even started lining up the night before, slept on the pavement overnight so that they will be the first ones to be served by DFA in the morning. Given the foregoing, Mr. President, and my esteemed colleagues, I certainly look forward to your swift approval of Senate Bill number 1365 under Committee Report number 25. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
To co-sponsor the measure, Mr. President, I move that we recognize the President Pro Tem, Senator Ralph Recto.
Any objection? There being none, Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this bill is pretty straightforward. It extends the period of validity of the Philippine passport from 5 to 10 years. But once it becomes a law, its benefits are far-reaching. By simply lengthening the expiry date of the passport, Filipinos will be spared the hassle and the hardship of renewing their passports every 60 months. This is unarguably one anti-red tape measure, which should have been done a long time ago. The thing is, while technology has made their passports hard to counterfeit, it has not made it easy to secure. Not far from here, queues of applicants coil around a building, rain or shine, to apply for that document that would allow them to travel. It is a scene replayed in many parts of the country. President Digong recalled the many times he was moonlighting as a taxi driver when he would see applicants queue overnight and sleep in the cold pavement of a mall in Davao City where passports were being issued. The call for passports with longer validity is not something new. It was not hard to discover as if it were a distant meteorite. It is a simple fix that doesn't involve rocket science. From this chamber alone, many of us have been pleading for more than a decade for a Philippine passport that is valid for more than 5 years. Unfortunately, while chips have already been embedded into our passports during that time, common sense had a hard time penetrating the heads of those to whom we had addressed our appeals. So finally, of all the passport-related apps ever invented, the most needed, which is a longer legal shelf life, is now provided in this bill. And with it, the relief it hopefully brings to be felt, for example, by an OFW in Europe who, to have his passport renewed, needs to ride the train to another country because that is where the nearest consulate is. Or the seaman who, instead of spending his vacation with his loved ones, has to spend days to renew what is literally his family's passport to a good life. Or the retired Lola who needs it for her annual apostolic missions to her children who now live abroad. Or the millennial backpacker who survives on instant noodles just so she can bag piso sale tickets and who has been echoing the plaints of many Pinoy wanderers. Kung hindi pwede ang visa-free travel sa maraming bansa, habaan na lang natin ang visa ng passport. Let us, however, issue this warning to those who may want to profit out of 10-year passports by jacking up their costs. Bawal po yan. The established rule in setting fees for government-issued documents is that whatever charges imposed should merely recover the cost in processing and producing them. In short, passport fees to be retained by the DFA must be just enough to recoup expenses in rendering this public service. That is why, if you will examine the price structure of the one ordinary Philippine passport expressly processed, of the 1,200, only 250 goes to the DFA. While on paper, the DFA's passport income of 4.1 billion in 2015 appears to be huge, it merely reflects the collected amount for eventual remittance to the passport producers and not the retained income, which is only a minuscule portion of total collections. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, when Rizal left the Philippines for the first time on May 3, 1882 for Spain, he was carrying a passport under the name Jose Mercado. It was obtained for him by his uncle Antonio Rivera. Fortuitously for him, locomotives have begun crisscrossing Europe, rendering border controls useless. So like a modern-day Shenzhen visa holder, he was able to travel to many countries and hook a girl in each seamlessly. This bill will not make every Pinoy a Rizal when it comes to the ease of getting a passport, as he got his through an agent and with an alias to boot. Nowadays, non-appearance is a big no-no, and using an alias constitutes passport fraud. But at least with this bill, the frequency of getting a passport and encountering the attendant hassles will be cut. With passport issuance reaching 3 million a year, at least 30 million Filipinos will benefit from this bill in the next 10 years. Mr. President, I congratulate the chairman of the reporting committee and the vice chair, Senator Cayetano and Senator Villar, and thank both of them for consolidating my Senate Bill 795 with this bill as I call for its speedy approval. Maraming salamat, Mr. President.
Mr. President, to give time to the members to study the measure, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1365 under Committee Report number 45.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I already moved to suspend consideration of Senate Bill 1365, but just for the record, would like to submit the sponsorship speech also of Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, the chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, to place it on record, Mr. President.
So the manifestation is noted.
Parang privilege speech.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we were supposed to tackle the corporation code that the minority leader and the President Pro Tem requested that his amendments be taken up on Monday. So with that, I move on to consider, and I move to consider PS Resolution 335, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
May we ask Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Resolution expressing the profound sympathy and sincere condolences of the Senate on the death of the Honorable Leticia Ramos Yahani, former Senator 1987-1998, and Senate President pro tempore 1993-1996.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary who sponsors the, who are the authors of the measure?
This is introduced by Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And the Majority Leader. As well as the
Majority Leader. May we also ask that all the senators present,
Yes.
especially Senator Cynthia Villar, be made co-author and sponsor of the measure, Mr. President?
Is there any objection? There being none, motion to make all senators present as co-authors is approved.
Mr. President, we would like to submit into the records the sponsorship speech of Senator Lauren Legarda, as she is not in the hall at this point, Mr. President.
And also mine, Majority Leader.
And
Yes,
also
I submit.
the President, Senate President.
Ito. Submit.
So, yes, for the record, I move that the prepared sponsorship speeches of the Senate President and the Majority Leader and Senator Lagarda be inserted into the records, Mr. President.
If there is no objection, motion is approved.
I move to adopt PS Resolution 335, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and Senate Resolution number 335 is hereby adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to suspend the session for a few minutes.
An objection? There being none, session is suspended.
Inawat ko nga yung sarili ko. You are ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, we were supposed to take up the amendments to the Corporation Code and the Anti-Discrimination Act. We will move it for Monday, Mr. President, as the first two subject matters of the agenda. In the meantime, I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, May 8, 2017.
Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, May 8, 2017.